Spurs have certainly been racking up the miles this week and managed to avoid defeat. We'll be discussing both games, and Vicario has been catching some heat on his involvement in the goals we've been conceding. But is the criticism fair? All that and more on this week's Crowing Cockerel podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Crowing Cockerel podcast. I'm Graham and I'm here again with Mark. Hello, Mark.
How are we doing?
Yeah, really good. And you, Tom?
Good. Looking forward to another cracking chat with you boys.
Yeah, so two really contrasting games to talk about, at least two contrasting performances, I would suggest. Bodo Glimt away in the Arctic Circle on the plastic pitch, struggled a bit, and then Leeds away in Storm Amy, came away with three really, really good points. The Leeds game was really, really quite pleasing. I know our predictions were very positive, but we did those before the Bodo game. We sat through the Bodo game. We stole a point out there, really, if we're being absolutely honest. But I thought we were really good against Leeds. You know, an away performance. We've still got the number 9 position problem, really. But it was great that Tell got on the score sheet. Could have had another. And generally, you know, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think 3 points away in the Premier League is always a good result, no matter who you're playing against. Leeds have had a decent start to the season. They're mid-table. And yeah, I think it was probably one of our better performances this season, to be honest. We played a lot quicker. We looked in control. There were some notable performances from the kind of players that we're looking for big performances from. So I'm talking about Xavi. I thought Kudus played very well. Palhinha continued his really impressive start to the season. So yeah, lots to be positive. And as you say, especially after that pretty dire performance in midweek, really good to bounce back. 3 points. And of course, we're moving into the international break, third in the league.
Yeah, on top of that as well, the early Saturday kickoff, which is a little bit of a cheek given how far we had to travel for the Champions League game. But yeah, that was really pleasing, that the pace of play, which was something we were all complaining about on the last pod. And Leeds have a really good home form. It's been over a year since they'd lost at home. So we all know it's a step up in the Premier League coming up from the Championship. So it was likely that record was going to go at some point. But for us to do that on the back of that, long distance turnaround on the back of that performance, I was thinking that was going to be a potential banana skin for us. And actually, when the team news came out, the fact that Tell was chosen to lead the front line, that felt a little bit like a risk. Odebear again being chosen ahead of perhaps Johnson, who we might have thought, given his recent goal scoring, had a better chance. Great to see Xavi playing in the number 10. So that was something we were calling for as well. But yeah, I think overall, and especially given the amount of travel involved, yeah, a really good result at Leeds. And a really good antidote to what was a really poor performance at Bodo.
Yeah, and it was so slow and cautious against Bodo, wasn't it? And again, they're another team with a fantastic record at home. But we didn't look like we'd gone there with any confidence to go and get a really positive result. We didn't look like we were in the game. I know that Richarlison missed really what was a sitter before Bodo got on top of us, but that was the only moment we got in their half, really, with any quality. And they were so much quicker to the ball, won every single duel until those substitutes came on when we were 2-0 down. And the really frustrating thing is, with the last sort of 20 minutes, we looked like we could have scored quite a few goals against them. They didn't look particularly strong on crosses, and moving the ball fast was starting to concern them. I appreciate it's late in the game and their energy levels probably drop as well. But I thought, after the first 10 minutes at Leeds, completely different. We were a bit more on the front foot. And I know I messaged you guys quite early on saying, we're just losing every battle again. We're just losing. But that changed, and we got hold of the game, and the crowd was on the referee's back because he was giving us free kicks. But that's because Leeds were fouling us quite a lot. So I felt like we were pretty strong standing up to that. I thought Xavi is clearly getting used now to the hustle and bustle of the league. He stood up to them trying to knock his stride And the other thing that I thought was really different is we did try and get it forward quickly. And the first goal, I think, was only Tell's third or fourth touch. But it was really noticeable that Kudus didn't hang on to it. He just put him in straight away, put it down the channel, and he had a go. You've got to buy the ticket. He bought the ticket. It had a bit of a deflection and flew in the top corner. I thought there was a real change there, and we had some really good counter attacks as well. We were quite fast getting forward, and I do think Tell, although he didn't get in the game an awful lot, his running power was quite important because I think their centre backs were more concerned with him running in behind than maybe they would have been with Richarlison.
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually, because as you say, Tell was pretty anonymous really throughout the game. I thought I don't think I'd love to know how many touches he actually had of the ball, but I think you're right. Just the fact that he was making those runs off the ball and that ability to stretch that game a little bit more gave everyone else a bit more space. What was really noticeable as well was Bentancur. He was really putting a pretty aggressive press. He was the one that nicked the ball, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Pretty high up, and he did that a few times, and that was something that was missing as well at Bodo. I mean, the tactic was everyone behind the ball and really negative and defensive, whereas we were far more kind of aggressive in the press, and we looked to go and meet them further up the pitch, and it just meant that again until probably 10 minutes to go, when again we kind of defended pretty deep and they launched that assault on us. But for the rest of the game, we played the game far enough away from our goal that they couldn't really threaten it that much. It was fairly comfortable, I thought, and we completely deserved to get that second goal and win the game.
Of course, Bentancur's got his new contract now as well. Him and Palhinha, if they can get a really good understanding of who's pressing, who's tackling, who's covering, because Palhinha's already shown us that there's a goal in him. Then I won't be overly worried about those two playing as a seemingly sort of two sitting defenders, or rather two sitting defensive midfielders, when we feel like we should be a bit more on the front foot. And when I did see that starting 11 from Thomas Frank against Leeds, it seemed obvious to me that he was going for a very rapid front four. Kudus, Simons, Odegaard, Tell. It felt like pace was the order of the day there. So that if we were going to attack, it seemed likely that it was going to be looked to be done on the break with the speed of those players. So yeah, I thought Odegaard could have got himself an assist if Tell put that header away as well. He made some really good runs throughout that match, but you can't get away from how good Kudus was. Definitely his best game for us. They were showing some stats afterwards. He was almost hop in every area, and that included duels won, not just completed dribbles, which, by the way, in the Premier League, he is miles ahead of anybody else.
I think it's fair to say that some of those dribbles could have been avoided. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he was great against Leeds. I really do. But there was certainly one point where he was almost doing it just to prove a point. And I think he completed about 6 dribbles until he was tackled. And it was like just late off. Puro had 20 yards of space to put a ball in the box, and he just refused to give it to him because he wiggled his way out about 3 or 4 players 2 or 3 times, and it was
He beat the same man about 3 times, didn't he?
yeah. And it's just getting that balance right. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you compare the right side and Kudus to the left side, and it is a bit unbalanced at the moment, isn't it? Because Odegaard was all right, wasn't he? But if you put me on the spot now, I couldn't tell you, apart from one cross, which was really created by Simons with his little chip to him, anything that he really did. And, I might get shouted down, but, there was nothing sort of memorable. He was solid. He didn't do anything spectacularly wrong. But you compare that to the performance on the right with Kudus of making goals and, the goal he scored, bullying the defender, getting the ball off him, driving at the middle of the 18-yard box and then finishing. It's really, really quite exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when Odegaard gets the ball, I don't get excited. It's don't feel like he really has an end product. I don't feel like he is really got that kind of physicality about him that's going to overly worry Premier League defenders. He still very much for me is a fringe player. When he's in the starting lineup, I see him as the rotation option. So yeah, and that definitely gives us a bit of an imbalance, and it's a bit of an issue as well because it's pretty clear from the two performances that he's been at the number 10 role that Xavi is way more effective in that central area. I don't want to see him out on the left, but if he's going to be in the middle, then obviously, as we saw, Bergvall was on the bench, Sarr was on the bench. That left-hand side is a bit of an issue, and I don't want to see Xavi shoved out there, but it might well be that we see that happening more often just to accommodate, the likes of Bergvall and Sarr being in that team as well, which is unfortunate.
Are you surprised Johnson's not getting a go out there?
Yes and no. I mean, again, with Johnson, he, as we've mentioned before, he doesn't necessarily, he's a different type of player, isn't he? He's not going to be someone that's going to be taking players on. And again, from the left, he's not even really going to be crossing that ball in with his left foot. So it's difficult. And Kudus isn't going to be playing those passes in necessarily to send him through. So it's a difficult one for Johnson.
I would think from that left-hand side, because I'm not wrong in thinking that Johnson's a right-footed player here.
Mm.
That seems like the perfect opportunity for someone with his scoring ability to be able to sort of come in, cut in, and have a go. We've all been saying he's one of the best finishers in the squad. So I mean, it does surprise me that Johnson's not getting more game time.
Yeah. I'd rather see him in than Odobert for sure.
I think the issue in the way that we play at the moment is we don't go through the middle of the pitch quickly. So we go round the sides, and therefore Kudus is great because you can play it into him with the defender on his back and he will get out of that. Whereas Odobert is probably better at that because he's got a higher skill set in tight marking situations. Whereas Johnson is, as we keep saying, he's almost more of a second striker, isn't he? That is where I think we all see him developing and probably being his greatest strength. And it's whether we get to a point where the patterns between that midfield three means that we're not reliant on always going to the fullback and then up to the winger and then inside, because that tends to be what we're doing so much at the moment.
I think that is where Xavi made the real difference, because what I noticed in those first 10 minutes, and you were right, where the first 10 minutes, Leeds seemed to be on top and they really put a strangle on at the centre midfield. Whenever we had the ball in defence, we had Bentancur and Palhinha in that centre midfield, and sometimes there were 4 or 5 of their players all around those two, basically just stopping that outball into our midfield. And so we needed to go out wide, and that's where Xavi really came in. He just occupied the same sort of area as Maddison used to, just that little in-betweeny left-hand side area, and they couldn't pick him up because they were so concentrated on the middle, and he just found so much space. And I think that was his best game for Spurs, for sure. He really showed some proper quality touches in that game.
Yeah,
apart
absolutely.
from the Rabona.
Well, yes.
You're not Lamella, mate.
He's good, but he's not a Lamella.
Wow. If that's not a backhanded compliment, I don't know what is. But Xavi has got those tricks and flicks in his locker. There was that lovely little ball he played over the top to Porro as well. That sort of level of talent, creativity, if he's confident, then absolutely you want to see him try and sort of do things up. And actually, Graham, like you were saying, that physicality, that being able to handle these games. And he was talking to Romero, saying, "Give me the ball," and trying to sort of orchestrate stuff through the middle. Yeah, I see that as is not just physically getting used to the league, but mentally being more connected with the team. And if that confidence can grow, I think we've got a really good player on our hands. The good thing is that we're heading into an international break off the back of a win. And off the back of a performance that I think helped sort of eradicate some of the negativity we were feeling leading into the Bodo game, and especially afterwards, because I know on the chat, all of us were pretty frustrated with how that went.
Yeah, and are we allowed to criticise Thomas Frank? Because he's had a pretty decent start to the season. I think we would have taken this, wouldn't we? 4 points in the Champions League and 14 points in the Premier League after 7 games. Now, you carry on that for a season, it's happy days, and we have got areas where we can improve on. It's not like you're looking at it and thinking we can't get better than this, because we absolutely can. And I'm really positive, as I said last week, is that you put Solanke in that number 9 slot where he will run the channels, where he'll hold the ball up. I think that lifts us another couple of levels as well. But despite the great start, can we criticise Thomas Frank a little bit for his selection against Bodo? Because the one thing from last season about Bodo Glimt is that they're very quick to get forward. They're quite physical. That's how they make up for the gap in any quality in their squad that they've got. And of course, they've got their plastic pitch. So with all of that in mind, was playing Johnson, who isn't a hold the ball up kind of winger. Odegaard was the left winger, wasn't he? We are two wingers that aren't going to hold it up under pressure. And I just think with a really physical team, where really the Champions League, you've got to look at the games you're going to win, and you've got a really good chance to win and go strong against that, I think. If anything, the time to risk players is almost PSG away. If you beat Bodo Glimt,
it did seem overly negative, and even in the interview after the game, he said, the tactic was to sit back, be solid, occasionally break, but it really was just to sit there and be solid. And I don't know, to me that it just seems a really strange way of going about things, and especially the way the game went along. He seemed quite happy with the way it was going. Nothing really changed, and we were so compact and narrow. It meant they had all the space and time in the world to come and attack on the flanks. We were slow to all the press, and every time we got the ball, everyone disappeared. Like there was no. I remember one pass through midfield in that first half. Van der Ven played it inside. Apart from that, there was no attempt to play through midfield.
They couldn't pass to each other. There was no.
But there was no attempt. There was no attempt to, because the midfield, I kept on seeing, like we'd have the ball in defence, and there were no other Spurs midfielders on the screen, because for some reason they would all pushed up. So it was very clear that the tactic was to go direct, but it was aimless. It was just punting up, and it was by far and away the worst performance. I mean, I know Bournemouth was bad, but this was worse. It was an absolutely terrible performance against Bodo, I thought.
It seemed like there was a lot of mistakes as well, like just individually from a lot of players. Touches were poor, passes weren't going where they needed to be, or not at the right speed. How much can we put that down to the pitch?
They play on that pitch every day. That's what they train on. This is what makes me laugh about the plastic pitch. They play on these pitches every single day of the week in training.
Yeah.
So I'm not having that as an excuse.
The fact is what you don't want to be doing on plastic pitches is letting balls go in your box that can bounce around. But the most worrying thing was the actual goals we conceded were just terrible defending, weren't they? I mean, standing off.
It's lazy. It's lazy. Lazy
it was
defending.
Like, we'll let them have a shot from the inside. It was quite.
I mean, fair play. There were a couple of good strikes.
Yeah,
there were a couple of good strikes, but
you can't. That was. Yeah.
I think, like you say, that was the thing. It was a really lazy performance. I thought there was no closing down, and we were just standing around and watching them play. And I guess you have to credit the mentality and the resilience, as much as I hate that word, to come back and find a way to get the job done. And as you say, we've got to be happy. 4 points from our first 2 games in the Champions League. But it was a really disappointing evening, I thought. And hopefully we will have learned something from it. I mean, you asked earlier, is it right that we can criticise Thomas Frank? I think there's still certainly some questions that need to be answered. I mean, you look at our home form, it's not impressive at all. And the thing I worry about is that we set up to play on the counter, and we did that very well against Leeds. But obviously, we'll talk about the next game that we've got after the international break is at home to Aston Villa, is another game where you'd expect us to be on the front foot and dictating the play and having possession of the ball. And at the moment, those are the games that we've really struggled in. So do we think that that's a potential weakness at the moment, is that we're playing so defensively? We said before, this clean sheet first mentality, that doesn't allow us to really go and express ourselves and do what we need to do in those home games that we should be taking advantage of.
Yeah.
I think I'm hoping that the performance against Leeds is the blueprint he takes forward into other games. Because we did sit back a lot towards the end. I thought some of the latter decisions around the substitutions against Leeds were, the signs of a pragmatic, defensive-minded coach. Absolutely. Danzo helped keep the attacks down to a minimum, and we saw it out.
But they said in the game that we are the only team in the Premier League that has not conceded a goal beyond the last 15 minutes of the game.
It's a great stat as well.
Yeah,
because
it is.
That is one of the most sickening things in any game of football. To lose that in those last few minutes, just ask Liverpool.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes the best way, especially if you feel like you're the more dominant team, to finish off a game is by finishing it off, by keeping the pressure on.
That was the Ange way. That's done. That we've been there. We've done that.
But the thing about think about Aston Villa, I have no issue with Frank setting us up in the same way, but I would expect us to try and dominate that possession a bit more, it being on our home turf, and actually Villa are a more expansive side than Leeds are. I would expect there's probably going to be more gaps that we can exploit as well, and especially if we can keep Xavi in that middle area, in that 10 position, where I think he can be a bit more creative and set off the attacks. And it's almost a bad time, I think, for the international break to come in, because I would love to see what would happen next week if we were using that Leeds game as the blueprint for our next performance. All that said, though, we can still come out of those two games and feel like we got through them with probably more positive outcomes that perhaps we were expecting, especially after that Bodo game. And thinking about those two away games, should we have a bit of a Thom's teaser?
Oh, yes, please.
Thom's teaser.
Okay, so obviously 2 away games. We've just got through those, and the first of those at Bodo Glimt in the Arctic Circle. And I can tell you, if you didn't already know, that trip was 1,924 miles, and that's just there. That's not back, but we had to go 1,924 miles to go and play Bodo Glimt in the Champions League. And what I want to know from you is, how many times do you think we would have to repeat the trip to Leeds to travel the same distance? So from Tottenham Stadium to Ellen Road, how many times do you think we'll have to do that before we would reach the 1924 figure? And I'm going to let you have 1 decimal point here. To
1 decimal point.
Yeah, you can have it a decimal point.
I wasn't planning on using a decimal point.
Well, I think you should, just in case you want to play around the edges of another number someone suggests. So we'll start with Graham, because
So
you're currently
Bodo's
losing.
1,900 miles, yeah? 19, roughly.
Well, and 24.
And 24. Okay.
That's what I'm looking for.
I'm going to say 9.
Graham goes for 9. Mark?
I am going to say 16.
Wow. Mark,
you know where Leeds is?
Mark, you are so... How far do you think? Look, I know neither of you like to go further north than the Watford Gap, but my goodness. 16?
Is Leeds high?
Leeds, well, Leeds is about 200 miles away. So Graham was pretty damn close. It's 9.6 times that trip to Leeds goes into that trip to Bodo, which does mean, Graham, you have won Thom's teaser, and that brings the current score to 2-2.
Thom's teaser.
16. Wow.
That was a good teaser. I think it is time to talk about Vicario, because the Leeds performance was absolutely a perfect description and snapshot of Vicario as a goalkeeper. He made 3 really important saves, one-on-one against Calvert-Lewin, the shot near the end, and I think there was another one as well. I personally don't think the goal was his fault. I did when I first saw it, but on the replay with the deflection, I just think he was a bit unlucky that the ball bounced the wrong way, and As I say,
Yeah, I think Udogie was more culpable.
but Leeds should have scored in the first 10 minutes because I don't know what he was looking at. He's passing against Bodo and against Leeds. His distribution was atrocious. He put, Bentancur lost it and Calvert-Lewin nearly scored. But Calvert-Lewin isn't really quick to get to players. Why give it to Bentancur in the first place? Why is he putting that under pressure? He doesn't seem to understand the state of the game unless he's told not to play it short and when to do it. His command of the box, he looks flappy, if we're honest, which is a bit of a problem. And although he's not getting fouled all the time now, and he's not getting targeted in that way, I think it's fair to say that teams would probably look at Vicario and say, right, there is a weakness here, put it in the box. But is that just harsh? Are we looking for things to criticise him on when really we should be pretty thankful with him being actually one of the top goalkeepers for saving shots, and he does save an awful lot. He saves us on a number of occasions when you would expect him not to. So, yeah, where are we?
I have to agree that I think he has come in for some unfair stick, and especially for that Leeds guy. I don't necessarily lay that at his door. But the one area I think he is weak on is crosses. He seems to want to get out to the ball way too quickly. And yes, his distribution could be better. I don't know if that is perhaps a little bit of a hangover from last year, where, of course, we played it out from the back every single time. And actually, what he needs to be doing is looking at that better, longer distribution of the ball. That is slightly tricky as well because we don't necessarily have a big set midfield or front player for him to knock it to. If Dominic Solanke was on that pitch, I would be expecting Vicario to be looking for him and using that as a sort of a point for us to start some attacks even. I think there's a chance for his distribution to improve. I would hope that there's no question that he's one of the best shot stoppers in the league, and some of the saves he pulls off are brilliant. But yeah, if you have to pull him up about something, the way he comes out for crosses sometimes, that's the bit that gets me twitchy.
Okay, Mark, go.
No, well, this is it. Regular listeners will know my thoughts on Vicario. I said it before the start of the season. I actually, whilst Thom was talking, I just went and looked up his age because I was surprised how old he is actually, because he reminds me of a younger goalkeeper. I feel like he's still a pretty immature goalkeeper, but he's 20. He's 28.
28.
28.
It's young for a keeper, though, isn't it? They go until they're about 50.
No, but you're not, like, to me, when I look at him, he reminds me of somebody that is just kind of up and coming. I look at him and I thought, oh, is he maybe 22, 23, 24, still very new and green? Because it just, his decision making really is questionable at times. I don't think he's improved at all since last season. All of his weaknesses that he had last season, I still think he still has them. He's a good shot stopper, which is great. We shouldn't underestimate how important that is. But yeah, he makes me twitchy. I don't trust him. If I was in that defence, he would make me nervous. So I don't see him as a long-term solution. I do wonder about Kinski. I mean, obviously he is young. I'm not sure he is the solution right now. I've heard things about, we should maybe put Kinski in instead. I'm not sure that is the solution. So I think Vicario is the best option at the moment. I definitely think in the summer that goalkeeping position is somewhere that we should definitely be looking to see what's about and try and improve on.
I think it would be fair to say that the club should be looking to see what options are out there. But to me, he seems like one of those keepers that stops a lot of shots.
His save percentage is huge.
And that is your job. Keep the ball out of the net. And if he's doing that, he's doing his job.
Yeah, I mean, as for a keeper, the save percentage is the only stat really that matters. The number of saves, well, that's irrelevant because if you're in a good team, you shouldn't be making a lot of saves. So the fact he makes lots of saves isn't necessarily a positive, but he does
As
save.
long as you're not the reason that you're having to make a lot of saves.
Well, yeah, but
which-
what I mean is, if you're in a good team, that goalkeeper won't be on that list, will they? Because they're not saving a lot of shots, if that makes sense. So what you want to see is your goalkeeper high up in the percentage of shots saved. That's the
Yeah,
critical one, isn't it?
he's second in the league behind David Raya.
Yeah, that
this
makes sense.
season.
So you can't complain there. And of course, the other thing that's come out this week is, and I know Tom, you've got a bit of an opinion on whether this should exist at all, but
I know what you're going to say.
the leadership group.
Ah,
The leadership group.
Yeah.
So yeah, a bit of a strange one, isn't it? I don't think we knew about these until last season, was it, or the season before? So it was an Ange thing, wasn't it? But it's been mentioned a number of times, and then obviously with Son leaving and the captaincy opening up, a big thing was made about Romero being made captain. And then Thomas Frank has been asked for weeks who's in his leadership team. And part of me thinks, I'm not sure Thomas Frank cares. This has clearly not been his priority because he's just managed to get round to it on his list, hasn't he? And I think it's more for us as fans and the media and that kind of thing, because realistically, that's an internal thing that maybe gets sorted. But they did a lovely picture that looked like they'd all been dragged in for their first day at work.
Yeah,
Stand
I was
by the
gonna
wall, please.
It was pretty cringy, wasn't it?
But I mean, I do think it's worth talking about because so we got Romero's obviously captain. We've got Ben Davies, who he must be fantastic in the dressing room because he's not going to be on the pitch very much, is he? So he's not a leader on the pitch. Maddison, who's injured. You've got Van der Ven there as well, and you've got Vicario.
Just on before we move on to and we definitely do need to speak about this, but for not very long because it will make me cross. But on that, with Van der Ven being in that group, I was really pleased to see that Van der Ven got the armband against Bodo Glimt, and I would prefer Van der Ven as a vice captain than I would, let's say, Vicario, who I think has done it for us before. That's exactly the sort of thing we want to be doing to build Van der Ven up and bring him on as a sort of a leader of the team, if only just to show him that, he is that well thought of, because other clubs are looking at Van der Ven, as sort of one of the best central defenders out there, especially with his pace. So yeah, really glad that he was included in that group. Great that he got the armband against Bodo.
So for me, it's pointless. I don't see the point of the public nature of the leadership group. Every single team is going to have this leadership group. They're all going to be senior pros. It exists 100% in every single club. It's not a special thing that we're doing here.
I just don't see the point in making it public that this is our leadership group. It opens ourselves up to loads of criticism. So if a couple of these players get injured, or if they're not
to be
playing,
fair, they already are, aren't they?
Exactly. So, which is why it's so laughable. But if they're getting injured or if they're not on the pitch, it just means. Or if there's maybe, let's think of a scenario where maybe you've got a falling out between Van der Ven and Romero, or Vicario and Van der Ven because of some mix up at the back. These things happen, and then all of a sudden, you've got another revenue stream of chat that the internet can pick up and run with, going, oh, they've argued, and now there's disharmony between
fracture in the leadership group.
Exactly, it's absolute tosh. So. For me, it just needed to be internal.
If Maddison's there, is he the spokesperson for people in the treatment room? Because if he's there, why is Kulis? Because to me, Kulusevski should be in line for vice captaincy or captain for his performances over the last few years. Now he's dragged the team through quite some difficult things.
Perhaps he wasn't in that day.
Perhaps he wasn't in that day. Thomas Frank has said that each person provides a connection with different areas of the squad and whatever. So, you don't know where the clicks are and why that's done.
I don't have a problem with to be honest, with players that aren't playing being in that group. I don't think it is a on the pitch leadership group.
No, it's a communication lines, isn't it? I think.
Exactly. But yeah, like I say, I don't see the point of making that public. for sure the same thing exists at every club. There are going to be, groups of senior pros that are available for the younger or newer players in that team to go through, so that they're not, because no one is going and talking directly to the manager for everything. They're always going to have these almost like team representatives, if you like. That's what they are. So why it needs to be this big thing about the leadership group, I don't know. It all seems a little bit pointless.
Right. So the next game that this fantastic leadership group leads us into is a home game against Aston Villa. So it's time for our predictions.
So once again, a bit like last week, 2 games and 2 very different results. Very simple to summarise the Bodo predictions. We were all wrong.
Yeah.
And we didn't get any of the goal scorers right either. So a big fat nul point all round for the Bodo. On to Leeds. And, well, we all predicted a win. I said 2-0. So I get 1 point just for predicting the right result.
Well done.
Thanks. Graham, you predicted 2-1. So you get 2 points, a correct score as well. But ladies and gentlemen, hot on the heels of the milestone of the first ever clean sweep bonus, you'd only gone and done it again.
Clean sweep bonus.
Yes, another magnificent prediction, 2-1, and Kudus finally scored. So congratulations on that.
Had to happen at some point.
Are we giving him that wicked deflection?
hey, I'm taking it, especially because about 15 minutes in, Mark was going, I have no idea why you make Kudus your goal scorer in this game, Tom. That just made it so much the sweeter. So I take it. And what I am very interested now to know is, given I was languishing at the bottom of our little league of predictions only but a couple of weeks ago, I'd love a little update, Mark.
Yes, I can absolutely give you an update. I'm afraid, Graham, you're still languishing behind in the wooden spoon place with 7 points. I am just ahead on 9, but 2 clean sweep bonuses in 3 games for Tom has bumped him all the way up to 11 points. So
Get in.
Congratulations, leading the way at the moment. So no predictions this week because we've got the dreaded international break. Boo hiss. So we'll be releasing our predictions for the Aston Villa game a little bit closer to the date. But yeah, well done, Tom. Top of the league going into the international break. Let's see if myself or Graham can put a dent in that lead once we get back to Premier League action.
Right, chaps, let's finish off with our cockle doodle diss.
His hair's too long. He just honestly fallen into a sponge pudding. Cock-a-doodle diss.
My diss this week comes off the back of watching the Leeds game, listening to the commentary from TNT Sport in the UK. And again, near the end of the game, as we were clinging on for the lead, it was mentioned that there was a possibility, and I hate this phrase, it does my head in, and it is mentioned far too much. It's mentioned in games every single season. After every time that somebody changes the manager, we wouldn't have won this game last season.
Yes.
I really hate pointless comparisons.
But what does that even mean, though? It's such a meaningless thing, isn't it?
The thing that I really made me cringe is that what won us the game in the end, really, is that save at the end. Now, if Vicari doesn't make the save, and it was a good save, it's 2-2. And you can put all the other context of the game together, whether whose fault, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's moments, isn't it? And Bodo Glimt, nobody said we would have won that game last season, but we did. So, you get this ridiculous comparison almost to you have to beat down someone when something's going well. And it's just another example of that. Seasons are different, oppositions are different, players are different, form is different. Last season is irrelevant. That's why you have seasons. It ends and unless you've got relegated, you start again at 0 points to Premier League and you just go again. And hopefully you've improved on last season. But Why the crowing about last season we wouldn't have won that game? We have no idea. Leeds weren't even in the Premier League.
It's a lazy phrase.
It is. Well, there we go. Another week done. I think we're feeling a lot more optimistic. I didn't need to get into the counselling couch this week. An away point in the Champions League, 3 away points in the Premier League. All in all, I think we've got to be pretty happy with that. I'm afraid we've got an international break to endure now. Until then, keep on supporting the Spurs. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, Spurs.